There we go. Welcome, ladies
Take
and
that.
gentlemen. Yep. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Game Changer podcast. I am your host of the paladin of positivity and everybody's local favorite banana, NateFNGreat. And I'm very fortunate to be doing another interview segment with an independent wrestler from Wisconsin. Well, former, I should say. He had a great, wonderful career. Honestly, looking back, he's one of those guys I really wish I had the chance to observe his career more. I saw him sporadically in WPW, ACW, but his recent run, his final run with Now That's Wrestling was definitely one of the things that helped me appreciate this guy a lot more. He is a monumental personality in the world of professional wrestling here in Wisconsin, a ginormous ego, some people might say. He is the one, the only, the ever so cocky Devan, the man, Drake.
Hey, how's it going, man? Mr. Banana Guy.
I still say to this day that my favorite photo that I took with you is the one where I'm chucking bananas at you and MC McClure. And there's just you having that look of like, oh, you got a banana. Well, I got a banana too. And then McClure just throws a banana directly right at me as retaliation.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I was like pointing the banana at you like a gun for whatever
Yes.
reason. And I think I was yelling at you, like, go back to Mario Kart, loser, or something like that.
I didn't get
I
that.
said something ridiculous on the order of that.
Well, to be honest, it's not the most ridiculous thing that I've heard, not the most ridiculous thing I've experienced. I mean, we both know Kodiak, so
Yes. Yeah,
so
that was some good times there and now.
and ladies and gentlemen, we will talk a lot about his time with some of the promotions. But first things first, something I'd always like to talk to people about is what got you so interested in the world of professional wrestling. So, what was kind of the thing that sparked the fire for you? What got you so interested in the world of professional wrestling?
Well, like everybody that gets into the pro wrestling business, everybody starts out as a fan. Um, I started falling in love with it like when I was 5 years old, watching it at my grandma and grandpa's house. Um, I was watching Monday Night Nitro. I wasn't allowed to watch WWF because it was more graphic. But no, I fell in love with it watching WCW programming way back then. And then as I got older, I got into WWE, especially when the Monday Night Wars was going on, I guess you could say. And then I had nothing else to watch. Now that I got a little bit older, I was in my teenage years. So I was like, well, I'm going to watch WWF at the time, going into WWE. And then I really got into it more. And then like as I'm getting older, I thought, oh, maybe I can, you know, try this out, actually try professional wrestling out. And yeah, that's kind of how I guess I grew into becoming or wanting to become a professional wrestler at that time.
So, what kind of sparked the deal to wanting to be a pro wrestler? Was there like a specific match where you kind of looked at it and thought, this is going to be me someday? Or was there like a specific wrestler that you're kind of idolizing going into it?
Well, it's funny, way back in 2007, I don't know if you remember or heard of Mercury One Wrestling before.
That does not ring a bell.
It does not. Okay. It was owned by Mike Mercury at that time. They were running shows in the Manitowoc area, Green Bay area. And my dad actually took me to go see this. It was my first ever independent wrestling show. And I went there and uh I've seen like Shane Hills, some other big independent wrestlers there. I didn't even know independent wrestling even existed at that time. I thought, oh, this will be interesting, to go and see this. And I thought it was way better than like Monday Night Raw or anything WWE, related. And I was like, I kind of want to try this out. Like, this seems pretty awesome. So I got in contacts with Shane Hills, and I just went from there and asking about training and whatnot.
So, there's always stories about first day of training, first month of training, however long it usually takes for them. So, kind of walk us a little bit step by step. What was your first day like in training, as well as compared to how your first month went with training?
So if anybody knows Shane very well, yeah, he has the ring inside of a barn. So this is like old school AWA training. My first day, I started in late fall. No, it was late 2008. I think it was like November, and it was cold, very, very cold. And there's no heat inside this barn, so it definitely felt super old school, like Greg Gagne, old style training. I had like 5 layers of clothes on me. It was so cold. Bumping sucked. Like I can't even like I can't tell you how much pain I was in after just one bump. Uh yeah, the first day, like to anybody, a lot of people, it really does. Like a lot of us guys get offended for, these days because when somebody comes and says, this is fake, it's like jumping on a trampoline. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It absolutely fucking sucks. Um, but yeah, like I got my ass kicked my first day because if you can't handle day one and you're gonna quit, which a lot of people did quit on their first day. And don't get me wrong, I didn't even think about going back because that's how much it hurt and sucked. And I gave it 2 weeks, and I didn't even go back for 2 weeks, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. This hurts. But I ended up going back, and the only thing that made me go back was Shane said to me on my first day was, if you keep coming back, it'll get easier, on your body, and you'll adapt to the pain. As weird as that sounds, and I was like, well, that doesn't sound fun, but I ended up going back and I listened to him, and day two was a lot easier. Like just on my back and adjusting to everything. Like even hitting the ropes sucks because those are just those cables in there, as you're hitting them. Um, yeah, everything about it, like just like getting bumped, taking those slams on the mat, it definitely does a toll on you, especially for as long as I've been doing it, like nearly 15 years, but anyways, yeah, going back to camp, man, like your day one, he plans on just kicking the shit out of you and tries to make you puke. I did not puke on my first day because I was in decent shape at that time. But yeah, and then for like as the weeks were going by in training, it just got easier on my body and I was adapting to it fairly well. And I was actually really skinny when I started. I was 120 pounds, which is not big. um, so and I started out as like a high flyer, or that's what he was trying to build me as, was a high flyer at that time. But yeah, as time went on, man, like I just eventually got better at it, and then eventually I debuted.
It is crazy because I did a little bit of research before we did this to kind of look at some of the matches that you had, and one that stuck out was it was a WPW match that you had with Jordy Lee, and I think it was like either crowned the first ever or new X Division champion at the time, and it's kind of amazing because I look at you then, and you have the same theme song, which I'm going to ask about that in a bit, that you had this past year, and I'm just seeing this, and I'm seeing you as a baby face, and I'm just seeing all these things coming through, and I'm just kind of like, man, this does not fit him whatsoever. This song does not fit him whatsoever. Because you just seem like that generic, plucky young baby face and just be like, oh, hey, what's up, everybody? I'm
Yeah.
like, there's that part of me that's like, who is this dweeb? Who is this person? But no, one of the things I do understand is that you mentioned that a lot of times these trainers will definitely be hard on you first date because they want to know if you're going to be serious about it. So I can only imagine, how many people, like you said, go in and they think, oh, this is easy. This is not going to be anything. This is fake. They're going to teach us all the stuff. And then after day one, it's like, okay, this is not fake. I'm done. So let me ask this. When it came to the first, when you were in camp, how many people signed on when you were there and how many people actually stayed?
Stayed
To,
on, honestly, not many. I think there was three. The entire time I was in camp, I think three other people stayed.
yeah, that
And
definitely
um Shane's camp, the Dojo of Pain, I don't remember the exact number, but he said he had, I think, a couple hundred tryouts, and normally on their first day they quit. And
yeah.
only I think 30 something people stuck. So that's how like serious, and that's in the course of like I think like 20 years. Like that's like it's no joke. Like some people think it's just a walk in the park to do, and it's not. So like it's literally, you got to have the heart and passion for it, because if you don't, you're not going to make it.
No, definitely, I agree with that. So we go from first day of training to your first matchup. Talk a little bit about, the kind of emotions you had going into it. Were you kind of nervous, or were you kind of more excited? Did you have those kind of like jitters of being like, oh, it's my first matchup, this could be great, or just, oh, it's my first matchup, hopefully I don't suck?
Well, it's funny because like my first match was technically planned. Um, so I started going to the at the time, which is well now used to be WPW. It was at that time it was called NWA Wisconsin.
You remember that?
And I was supposed to have a scheduled debut eventually. I think I was like 6 months into training. I was supposed to have this scheduled debut. And I was supposed to have it with a guy named Chuck Dollar. But I ended up having beef with the promoters and the bookers at that time, because they thought my attitude was a little ridgy, because like doing ring setup, when you have like a group of dudes you're trying to do ring setup with and tear down, and not everybody wants to cooperate, and that can get frustrating. I lashed out on a few dudes, and yeah, it prolonged my debut a little bit longer, but that all patched up, and then I ended up getting an accidental debut basically in the summer of 2009 against Stacy Shadows. Stacy Shadows was my very first opponent. And I my ring name at that time when I started was Daredevil Devan. I was a high flyer. I didn't even have ring gear ready for this. I just had gym shorts, knee pads, and tennis shoes. But she had an opponent for that show, but she no showed. And they said, well, Devin, you can wrestle, you're trained and stuff. I'm like, and I was not ready for it, especially when it was just on the fly like that. And I was nervous as fuck. um, yeah, and when you're going into something like that, like I was shaking and sweating and stuff before I even debut, because it's your first match. Everybody's going to be nervous for their first match. I don't care who you are. But yeah, I went out there, killed it. It was only like a 5 or 6 minute match. But from that point forward though, I was getting more matches and more bookings.
Well, and it's really great because we talk about Stacey Shadows, and a lot of people might not know how big of a name that she is now, because she's wrestled with Ring of Honor and she's also wrestled in a lot of other promotions here. But
Yeah.
to have, that kind of experience, early on, hey, I mean, that's still pretty good. Even if you're only getting 5 minutes, at least you're kind of learning, okay, this is how it kind of starts off. This is kind of how, things deal. And there's some people that are really good at, thinking up stuff on the fly. But then there's some people that need to have like, they need the, well, I'll call it the Enzo treatment, which is like, okay, we got to go to here, to here, to here, to here, with like very little to no room for improvisation. As time goes on, do you find yourself more being used to more doing structured matches like that, or are you more kind of like on the fly kind of deal when you were as time went on?
Oh, when I started, I wanted them to be structured because I was, green and new. So I wanted every move, I wanted every punch in there. I needed to plan like everything out. Like I was like a nervous young kid. I was only 16 when I started. So like being at that age, now that I'm like way older now and I look back at that, I was like, yeah, that's definitely a young and scary experience for like a 16-year-old to just be thrown into something like that, especially the locker room atmosphere. But yeah, it's at that time, yeah, I just wanted all my matches structured. But now as I was getting, years into my wrestling career, I was like, uh no, I want to call it on the fly. I like calling things on the fly because it just it worked out better, and then you could try some new things, and yeah.
So after your first match, was there ever a point or a match where it kind of clicked where you thought, okay, I can do this, compared to like your days in training where you're just like, "Oh, I'll give it a couple weeks and then I'll, if I like it, then I'll, keep going. If not, then well, this is maybe not for me." Was there a specific match you could think of where you're just like, okay, make it or break it, and then afterwards you're like, I can do this.
Yeah, I mean, like when I started out, I had that match with Stacy, and then like they wanted to build me as a cruiserweight because of how big I actually was. Uh, and I don't know how far you dug deep into my like history there, but I was known as this young, skinny wrestler, Daredevil Devon at the time. I was starting to put face paint on. I was like a miniature version of Sting, but I was high flying basically. And eventually they put the X Division Championship on me in NWA Wisconsin there. And I ended up winning that title 5 times in the company. And yeah, I was doing like some high flying stuff, not compared to towards the end of my career there. Like I was literally springboarding off the top rope. I was doing a lot more high flying stuff off the ropes. Definitely watched a lot of like Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho, Jeff Hardy to learn all that high flying stuff. And yeah, I was at that time, like I would say that was like 2009 to like 2012, 13. I was Daredevil Devon. And that was like practically the only time I was a baby face because, I was just this young, rambunctious, dweeby kid, like, you just bring it up. Um, and you come out with that baby face fire through the curtain. You're like, come on, whatever town we're wrestling in, And eventually that gimmick did get stale. I mean, I remember one night I did like a match against another baby face. I think it was actually against Shane. And everybody knows Shane, and they were cheering for him. I'm like, okay, this gimmick's starting to get stale here, and I need to do something else. So like, and that's basically what my first 4 or 5 years was in like NWA Wisconsin was like this Daredevil Devon high flying, character. And at the 5 year mark, it got stale, and I needed to do something else.
So let me ask you this before we get into obviously you dabbling into the darker side of the character.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite matches that what were part of those like first 4 or 5 years that you were as Daredevil Devon?
Yeah, I remember one night at Baba Louie's in De Pere, I had a match against Nathan Gus and Mark Prevey in a triple threat match. And at that time, WPW, or I don't even know what it was at the time, NWA Wisconsin, maybe still, they were trying to do like this hardcore fight night, extreme wrestling type atmosphere. So weapons were allowed and everything. And funny thing is, we went into that match with little to nothing planned. By the end of that match, I felt like we just did close to a 5-star match. Like we didn't plan nothing. Everything was on the fly out there. And to this day, it still stands as like one of my favorite matches because of the amount of like no planning we did whatsoever, and like the story we told in that ring. It was just phenomenal. And the crowd wanted another match, and we actually gave them a rematch like a couple months later. And that's a feel good feeling. But yeah, we tore it down that night, and I gotta say, as a baby face, that was probably one of my favorite matches.
It is really amazing when you can have three individuals go into one match and people are so excited after the first one. They're like, can you do that one more time? Just a little better. It's like you think of people like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Daniels. They had their series of triple threat matches. Another one that I can think of that's local here was I believe it was I think it was Brooks, Stash, and TW3, I want to say it was, and ACW, where first triple threat match was great, and then they got to the next one, and that was great. It might have actually been Grace, not Brooks, if I remember correctly. It's every single one of these shows can just blend in with each other. It's absolutely amazing to do them. But obviously, getting back to you mentioned that your character was getting stale. So obviously something had to change.
Yes.
Let's talk about that change because I feel like this is where things get really interesting for your career.
Yeah.
Talk about you turning heel for the first time.
Yeah, so this is where that blood money group comes in. So Bruno was the booker at the time for WPW. And I'll be honest, and I'll just say it on the show, and I don't even care if he listens. He came up with a lot of terrible ideas, and Blood Money was kind of the start of one of them. um, he he started this Blood Money group, and it was supposed to be, from my understanding, like this ghetto NWO, basically. So at first, it was like he had his handful of guys, and then like I think it was like my third win as the X Division champion. That's when I turned heel one night at Baba Louie's in De Pere, and I had to shake Bronson Bay's hand, and then that's when I turned heel. And then like later that night, we were like doing NWO type beatdowns on like some of the baby faces. Like, and I came out with like the John Cena chain around my neck, and I had like a white beater on. I had a bandana around my head. So this
Oh,
is like, so you had this baby face Daredevil Devan. He's all the kids love him. He's like a little superhero, but then he got stale, and oh, guess what? Now I'm like on the ghetto dark side. So it was a little fun time there in Blood Money, and it was some of the shows, man. That Blood Money run, like all we did, this was Bruno's booking at that time, was doing like run-ins and just beating up on a lot of the baby faces. Like I swear every match was that. That's what Blood Money was. I'm like, this is like somewhat terrible, but kind of fun in the process. Uh, but
so
yeah, I was actually very hard as a heel when I started doing that too. And I could go into a couple stories telling, but like I wanted that ECW heat when I started. Like it was pretty bad with some of the stuff I was doing.
so you say ECW heat. For me, I can think of two prime examples of that. Were you thinking about like Dudley Boys heat? Or are you thinking
Yes.
like New Jack heat?
I'd say Dudley Boys heat is what I was
Okay.
going for. Like I was spitting in people's faces. That's how hard I was going. And I was trying to start fights basically. Like I didn't want to be the, oh, shut your mouth, tell this person off. But no, I want you to fight me. Like that's how badly I wanted that heat right off the bat. So I was spitting in people's faces, and I got yelled at for doing that. And then at one point I got unbooked for this. I was telling children Santa Claus wasn't real. I got literally, I pretty much got suspended from WPW for costing a sponsor, actually, and one of the sponsors' kids were there, and the sponsor got so mad. They're like, "We're not having you as our sponsor anymore. Like, we're dropping this," and I got basically suspended for making children cry by telling them Santa Claus ain't real.
For some reason, I don't know if this happened at a now show, but I feel like somehow I've heard either this story before. Or I saw you do that where you're just like, Santa Claus isn't real.
There was, but I didn't come out and say it. But like that's when I made the crowd go silent because I was pointing at a Christmas tree at a December show for now, and
Okay.
I said you. And there was a fake Santa in the corner as well, and I said, you look in that corner. There's something fake in that corner, and I'll tell you what's fake. And then the crowd's like, he's not gonna go there. He is not gonna go there. I said that Christmas tree is not even a real Christmas tree. And even by saying that, some kids started crying.
That tree is real to me, damn it.
It's funny. Ruthie's mom is in the audience yelling, Devin, Devin, don't you go there, Devin. Don't you say it. But I went to the Christmas tree, which wasn't so bad, but it still made a couple kids cry for whatever reason.
There's some kids that seemingly can figure it out on their own, but there's some that are just getting emotional over the weirdest things. And apparently a Christmas tree is one of them. Holy cow.
Yeah, right.
Next you're gonna see is that guy dressed up as a banana is not really a banana. What?
Right. And he's got a face, arms, and legs. What's going on?
Right. So I do have to ask this. You mentioned with Blood Money that it was kind of like the NWO style. So stupid question, but I'm gonna ask it.
Okay.
Who is the Hall? Who is the Nash? Who is the Hogan of the group?
I was more like I was probably more of the Buff Bagwell, which I wasn't there right away. I wasn't there right away, but I think the leader, the Hogan was TW3, Tommy. Kaz was like the Kevin Nash. Rough Rider Rashawn was the Scott Hall. They were basically the originator guys. Jordy Lee was the towel boy at first, and then he eventually dropped from the group. And then there was Kippy. He became the towel boy. Like I remember Kippy would get on his hands and knees for me to like get in the ring. Like so I wouldn't have to make like go up the stairs. Like I'd stand on his back to get up to he was my stairs. And that's how I'd get in the ring with that. And that was like I'd say a 6 to 8 month reign as Blood Money, and then that dropped because I some smarter people in the business came along and said, you don't need to have this group jump every single fucking match and put them over as a heel. Like that's just how dumb fucking Bruno was at booking these shows, and yeah, going forward with that. But yeah, then that angle dropped, and then there was so many, and during that time, there was so much what was it like drama going through WPW, and somebody else took over. It was Ronald Pop Rocky for booking. So then, like, I went into a different direction eventually too. I pretty much was just dropped from that Blood Money group, and I think Blood Money just kind of uh disbanded eventually, and we all went like our separate ways on that. So then I was like solo Devin Drake at that time. Then that's kind of when I started that.
So one of the things I remember, it was WPW show in Stevens Point. I think that you were booked on the show because I think I remember mainly you, because one of the things that you would always do is you would have your chest puffed up and you would do that classic strut deal. So where did you come up with the strut? I guess we'll call it the Drake strut. Where did that kind of come about? Because I feel like it's more than just like a Vince McMahon knockoff, really.
Yeah, like I wasn't even really thinking of the Vince McMahon walk at that time when I started doing it, but a guy that gave me some advice is or tips or whatever you'd like to call it was Nick Colucci, as we talked about earlier. He's actually he was talking to a group of us before his show one night, and I remember he said, you know, you can just like with your body language, you can really piss somebody off by just like giving them like a facial expression or just something with your body. Like you don't even have to say anything. I was like, and I sat there and that like kind of like registered for a little bit, and I'm like, okay, all right, well, I'm gonna try this because like the strut, I like think back to like my high school days, like the classic bully, if you will. Like imagine like some like a guy my size walking through the high school hallways, and he's walking like that. Who's gonna like that guy? Nobody. Everybody's gonna want to see him get his ass kicked, right?
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna do that, and I'm really gonna think I'm 8 feet tall, 500 pounds on top of it. And when I do a move, I'm gonna do that classic strut and piss people off. And man, I pissed a lot of people off.
I remember specifically from the WPW show when you did that, and you probably been called. No, I know you've been called worse, but I just remember me and my friend Spencer, we were just doing like chants of "Mighty Mouse, Mighty Mouse, Mighty Mouse." I'm like, he kind of does look like Mighty Mouse when he does that. I don't know what it
Yes.
is, but like I said, I know you've been called worse
Oh
because
yeah.
because I've heard a lot of stories. One of which you might have to fill in the gaps for this. I do remember that you worked for a promotion, and I believe it was a situation where you said something or you did something to like the promoter's wife in the crowd, I believe it was, and it was literally one of those things where the promoter went backstage and was there like, "Where's that fucker? I'm gonna just almost trying to like either knock you out or something like that." But I think I might have missed a few details on that. So
No, no. Here's this is one of the good stories, and this is one of those stories that where you never think it happened, but it did. This was just a random backyard show. Now
Well, this
keep in
makes it even
mind,
better.
oh no, I'm not even happy about it because it was a backyard show. Me and Ruthie got onto this backyard show. It was actually Smash's uncle's house, and it was for his uncle's birthday. But keep in mind, I didn't know this was going to be a backyard show. I thought this was at a venue. So and it was in the summertime, outdoors. Me and Ruthie are going down. Oh, and Ruthie's like, yeah, I think this is at a venue. We get there, and like when you turn like as a pro wrestler, an independent wrestler, you don't want to go and wrestle in a backyard. It just seems like it's like, to me, it's like kind of lowering yourself. And I was not happy about it when we showed up there because we got there and like, oh, it's an outdoor show. It's a backyard show. I'm like, I was pissed because I'm like, I wasn't happy about it. I was like, because I feel like I'm lowering my I don't know, my talent here. And like, because if you watch any backyard wrestling match on like YouTube, they're all fucking terrible. But we get there, and I'm like, I had a sour attitude since I showed up because it's like, fucking backyard show, man. Come on. And I love Smash. I'm not knocking the show, his family or the whole thing, but it's like, come on, can we be a little bit more professional than this? But anyways, fast forward, I'm wrestling Ruthie, Michael Wayne, in a match that day. And keep in mind, I'm still sour about the whole backyard thing. I'm pissy, and I said to Ruthie, I don't want to do shit out there. And Ruthie's like, yeah, I don't want to bump either. So, we did not take this match seriously at all. But going forward, I think we were second or third match. And this entire audience, which was all Smash's family and friends and like his uncle's family and friends. So this is where it's going to start to get ugly. So Michael goes out there first. Yeah, he's the lumberjack gimmick baby face, right? Cool. Everybody likes him. I go out there. I go out there with a fucking ladder. And for no reason, it's not a ladder match. I just felt like going out there with a ladder. Teasing the fact that it might be a ladder match. No, you ain't getting a fucking ladder match. So I go out there and I start cussing at people. And there was no fucks given. There was no filter. I literally go up to Smash's uncle's wife and I called her a whore and a bitch. Man, was she triggered by that. Like, I got in the ring and she came in running after me and she's trying to fight me. And I'm like holding back her punches and stuff. And I'm looking at the referee who was fucking stupid and had no idea like what to do. He's like, oh, stop, get off. Oh, like he just, the whole layout was just like, I don't know, like it wasn't at like the professional level. So like, that's why my attitude was like, I just don't care right now. So I'm going to say whatever I want to say. And I called her those names, man. And like, eventually she got out of the ring. Michael and I had our match. Oh, and by the way, as I'm making my entrance, I also called a kid with Downs retarded, but I didn't know he had Downs. I know. I didn't know he had Downs until after the show when the parents came up to me and said, our kid has Down syndrome, by the way, and you called him retarded. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But anyways, going forward, we did the match and Michael Wayne came and he had a real axe, right? He put the axe under the ring. Match was over. Michael wins. I'm laying in the ring. You think that crowd would still like me by the end of it? No. They were throwing every object they could in the ring at me. They were digging stuff underneath the ring. What's underneath the ring? The axe. So somebody was gonna throw an axe at me. That's how much I pissed them off. And I got out of the ring. No joke. I had my back turned when I got out of the ring. A 13-year-old came and swung me in the back of the head with a punch. Like, that is how badly, like, they wanted blood out of me at that time. And like literally half the locker room had to come out and play security. That's how much I pissed everybody off. I get to the back in the locker room Smash's uncle is like livid with me. He came up to me. He's like, "You little motherfucker. You will call my wife a whore and a bitch. We'll go in." He said, "We'll go in the garage. We'll get some boxing gloves and I'll fucking knock your ass out myself." And I'm like, "Well, nice to meet you too, sir." And and like Smash had to calm everybody down. Like it got really, really bad. Like I don't even know. I stayed in the locker room part until the show was over, and then like we're at the after party afterwards. And here's a little bit more funny stuff. I got so drunk, and they had a pool there, right? I'm throwing
Oh
I'm
boy.
throwing sausage brats in the pool. I'm throwing food they made out in the pool. Uh, I went up to this kid's toy box. They had like a playground there and a toy box on the side. I pissed in the kid's toy box. Like there was no fucks given, man. Like and that's pretty much that whole story in Illinois. And it's a crazy one for sure.
Oh, that explains so much of it now. It happened in Illinois. Why not?
Yes.
I honestly thought that this story was going to end with somebody pushing you in the pool as you were drunk.
No, I was just throwing food in the pool and pissing more people off.
Figuratively and literally, apparently.
Yes.
So let's talk about what some people probably would say was one of your, I guess, crowning achievements. That being wrestling with a, using the politically correct term, little people's league, and supposedly being the only normie of the entirety of the promotion, I guess. So talk a little bit about that. And if you have a story, by all means, you have the forum.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually like I was bored at my normal job one day, right? And like doing those WPW shows around that time, being heel Devin Drake, I was hearing every short guy joke in the book. Like there was not one short guy joke I never heard of, you know. I've heard everything. So I was bored at work one day and I seen like extreme midget wrestling's coming to Milwaukee. So I was like, you know what, for shits and giggles, I'll message them and see if I can get on their show. So I sent him a message, and the guy that owns it got back to me. He's like, "Oh, you're really short. You're short, but you're not a midget." I said, "Yeah, could I come try out?" "Oh yeah, come to Milwaukee. You know, get in the ring. We'll see what you have." I'm like, seriously? Like this is a thing. This is actually gonna happen. So the day of Milwaukee, they show up. You know, I told them who I was, and then one of the more experienced midget wrestlers said, "You know, would you like to get in the ring? You know, and try out?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" No joke, Nathan. I was in the ring for 5 minutes, and they're like, "You're gonna be in the main event tonight." And I was like, "Ha ha, that's a good rib." No, you're gonna main event with me. You actually know how to work compared to these other morons that are on tour. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, I was in the main event that night in Milwaukee in front of just a huge crowd. Let me tell you right now, midget wrestling draws. Like, and some of these guys, they're going out there fucking stone, man. Like they don't know what they're doing. They can't work, but because they're midgets and that's an attraction, that's like the circus attraction. You know, they're amused by that. But then here I come out, and by the way, I changed. This is another gimmick I had at the time. A little sexy Devin Nash. I was, what? Yes, that was an actual thing, which was created by Nathan and Ruthie, and now wrestling, and that was
Oh,
a
what a
short gimmick.
shock.
Yeah, yeah, and Brock was Brock Hall, and we were the inside outsiders. Um, but anyways, I did the Devin Nash gimmick for midget wrestling, and immediately after that, they asked me if I wanted to go on tour with them. I was like, holy fucking shit, this is huge. And I was getting paid fairly well. And yeah, I went on tour with them for 3.5 months. I was on the road, literally wrestling across the nation. I was wrestling 3 to 5 nights a week. Yeah, it was like my full-time job basically. Living with midgets in an RV for 3.5 months was the absolute worst because they don't know how to take care of themselves. Um, but yeah, a lot of hilarious stories and a lot of good experiences too. And wrestling in front of a different crowd every night was just amazing because they didn't know who I was. So, but to come out as, little sexy Devan Nash, and a lot of them got mad at me. A lot of the audience members got mad at me because they knew I wasn't a midget. There was a borderline there, and I was obviously the tallest one. But I got a lot of heat for that, even from some of the boys, because they're like, well, this guy isn't even a midget. Why the hell is he with us? But I knew how to work and I knew how to, do my stuff. And I've got attacked a few times on tour from some audience members. Like I literally knocked a couple crowd members out because they were ticked off at me for not being a real midget. But that's okay. I always won.
You would think
But
people would learn that when you mess with a wrestler, they are not just going to be like, "Oh, this is totally fine." They'd be like, "Oh, you want to try? Okay, pop." Yeah,
yep.
he's on the ground.
There was actually, I could say a couple stories here. We wrestled at a biker bar one night, and all of the heels were going over. I was in the main event, but those bikers were getting so pissed off with all the heels winning, and I was always the one that was pissing people off the most. So I was basically their biggest heel. Well, these bikers are about to jump in the ring and like start killing people, and the promoter came back and he's like, "You're not gonna win this match. If you win, they're jumping you." I was like, "Really?" And I wanted to win, just to stir the pot, right? But no, I had to put the baby face over because the bikers they're drinking and shit. They were gonna like literally. I probably would have ended up dead if I would have won that match. But yeah, probably the best experience though on tour was wrestling in front of 5,000 people in Louisiana one night. And that was just an amazing experience because, like, we only had one night storylines. Like, we didn't have, oh, the next show it's going to be so and so. No, it's like one night storylines. And I'd always start out as like a referee. I'd turn on the baby face and we'd main event later that night. And that was like the same thing every night we did shows because nobody was like, following stories and whatever. But literally, we're doing the national anthem in Louisiana, and I'm like just looking around at everybody in front of 5,000 people, and I just can't believe like how big of an audience this is, and I'll be main eventing in front of 5,000 people. It's definitely my biggest achievement. But yeah, that was cool, and I pissed a lot of people off, and uh somebody broke glass on the floor. It was like cement, and somebody said the people from the audience is like, we're gonna throw you on this fucking glass. I'm like, oh yeah. And they just and I ended up kicking them off the ropes because that's how ticked off they were, and they were gonna throw me in a pile of glass. I was like, yeah, you ain't gonna do that. Like, here's the thing, I may be short, but I could really hold my own, like when it comes to like people trying to fuck with me like that. But yeah. And eventually, that 3.5 months came up, and like I could have went longer on tour, but I was like, the living it was like, dude, there was sometimes I'd go 4 or 5 days without showering because we were just constantly going and traveling, and it wasn't really healthy living in my honest opinion. So I was like, gonna take a break from that and go back to the independence and go home and do normal stuff. And yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, it was a phenomenal experience, but yeah, I had to adapt to normal life again.
I mean, there's only so much you can take, especially when crowds are basically saying, "Well, we're going to go GCW on your ass."
Yes.
So maybe this will be an interesting tie-in because this was one of the questions for those fans that are kind of curious. Some of these questions actually came from the Now That's Wrestling group, so there's some questions that had to be asked by some of these people. One of them, which I feel like you have plenty of stories about, is I was asked about getting drinks for girls at bars. Talking about that.
So at the after parties at like the Baba Louie shows for WPW, I would just say the most outlandish things. I'd say a lot of stupid things, which I'm about to get into, especially when you're drinking and you're hanging out with your certain friends and buddies. So there was these group of girls at the bar, right? Good looking. I said, "Hey, ladies, how you doing tonight?" Blah blah blah, flirting with them a little bit, and I'm still in gimmick. I feel I don't know why the gimmick never gets turned off, but I said, "Let me buy you ladies some drinks." "Oh yeah, sure, that's awesome of you." I said, "Bartender, these three ladies right here, get them three waters on me, and water at the bar is free." And they just look at me with the most like disgust look, and they're like, "Give me the cold shoulder," and they walked away. I was like, "Oh, okay." It was funny as fuck, just their reaction to that, and yeah, just the cold shoulder I got, and then they were like, "Well, fuck this kid. We don't want nothing to do with him."
All it took was just one act of random kindness to literally be like, "Yep, nope, fuck this guy."
Yep.
So I'm just looking out for you, but somehow I can actually picture that. Some of these stories, somebody else might think like, "This is outlandish. This is stupid. There's no way this happened." That is the one story where I'm like, you know what? I've met some of the women in the state. I can 100% believe that they would be like super nice at the start. You do one thing and they're just like, "Nope, I'm out."
Yes.
Easily. So you work for a lot of promotions here. You work for Now That's Wrestling, WPW, and ACW, which is probably the second show that I actually saw you work because it was the first Water City Wrestling Con, and it was the uh, what was the former Evil Roy Slade's Battle Royal. And one of the things that stood out to me with the show was the story that you and I believe at the time your protege, Big Mike, were doing,
Yeah.
where the two of you were aligned, and it was the big payoff where Big Mike gets the big win over you, and it seems like he's got the check, and it seems like there's gonna be a storyline going with it. But from what I remember, I don't remember them actually capitalizing on that story, and I'm kind of curious what all happened in ACW. Was it another situation where like kind of the attitude and such kind of came along, or was there something else that kind of caused you to leave ACW?
Yeah. So I'm gonna get a little dark on this subject because I did have a good run. I thought I had a decent run in ACW, and I got along with everybody. I'll just put this out there now. Throughout my entire wrestling career, I tried. I wanted to get along with everybody. I was never in any cliquey groups. But if you're in the wrestling business long enough, let's be honest here, there's people that form certain groups, cliques, if you will. And if you're not one of us, then the hell with you. But ACW, ACW, the guys that run it, uh, Nick Colucci, Dylan, who's the other guy?
Weimer.
Josh Weimer, yes. I loved all of them. And don't get me wrong, I had the best attitude going there. I worked hard. Um, yeah, eventually it was the Water City Wrestling Con with Mick Foley. That was my last ACW appearance. I won't go into too much detail on it, but in my humble opinion, the reason why I was pretty much stopped being booked for that promotion is there was a girl involved. And I'll say one of the said promoters was going after that girl. And when they seen I was with her, that's when I was stopped being booked. That's probably the PG answer I'm gonna give to that.
Okay.
And it's shitty because I've had how many like wrestling fans message me like, when you coming back to ACW? When you coming back? I loved you in ACW. And what's shitty about that is like I felt like I wasn't part of their like their clique enough. Like I felt like they had their wrestling school going on, and I felt like they wanted to bring a lot of those kids onto the show where I was just kind of one of those, oh, Devan, he did other things, whatever, but we don't want to use him for like anything big in ACW. I've no joke. I've only had one win in ACW. Like that just kind of goes to show how much they looked at me, I guess, and I felt like I could have done a lot more, like with storylines and like stuff. But it's one of those things where it is what it is, and uh, I had fun while I was there, But yeah, it's just a shame I didn't do more in that promotion, and that it's one of those situations too. And this is another, I guess, a reason why I just stopped wrestling as well as the amount of clicks and ass kissing you got to do for certain people, certain promotions, certain groups, if you will. Like that's the toxic bullshit that I just don't want to deal with. And it's unfortunate in that time that's the way it had to go, and I even messaged Dylan in my last year. I said, you know, I'm planning this 2022 being my last year. If you want to use me on any of your shows, I'll work hard, And I send them a long message just saying, I was happy working for you. I'll happily do another show or two if you'd like. Didn't even message me back. I was like, cool. So it's just one of those unfortunate things, that happened. And that is the reason I feel with the whole girl situation. That's the thing. Anybody that's watching this or listening, girls in wrestling don't mix well. And bullshit like that happens, unfortunately. So that's what happened there. And yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where I definitely do notice that with certain spots where there are those clicks and there are those deals, and it's one of those things where we dealt with this stuff in high school, and sometimes we deal with it within our work life. We don't want to deal with this in any other place, but sadly, there are places that still do that whole click deal, and sucks that you had to go through that because especially talking as a guy who saw you on what was probably one of your best years was that final year of 2022, where I got the chance to actually see you being elevated as a guy who can definitely carry his own. I mean, you had the one night tournament where you won the newly rechristened now heavyweight championship, and the main thing that Gus was saying that he wanted to go through, he wanted people to just literally do the whole, I want to say it was, I don't know if it was the NWO deal or it was the Montreal deal, where they just start chucking like trash into the ring, and it happened. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, the reason why
Yes.
they're doing this is because they know this guy is going to be a dick.
Mhm.
And let's talk a little bit about that, because that does tie into your final year with wrestling. Is now that wrestling has you as the now heavyweight champion, and you have some good matches in there. You had a match with Pornstash, you had a match with Ruthie, Gus, Randy Fitzsimmons, and it concludes with Classic Alpha, to which it was kind of weird because I remember hearing the rumors about you ending your career that year, and then I was thinking to myself, well, if that's happening, is he going to end it like here on this show, or is it going to be at the December show that we're going to see that deal? And guys, I cannot begin to tell you the atmosphere that was for me. This is one of those few times that I'm at an independent show. It's like you kind of hear the rumors, and you're kind of like, how is this going to play out? And
Yeah.
when you made that announcement that if you lost to Alpha, your career is done, I'm like, is this really gonna end? Like, is this really it? It wasn't until the 1, 2, 3 I'm like, holy shit, it actually, wow. I was in shock. And then the post match deal, which I think was amazing, which for the longest time throughout the year, everyone hated you. Everyone was booing you. Everybody thought that you were basically the worst thing since, I don't know, enter worst president that people have right here. But that moment when McClure is just jaw jacking you, pie facing you, you take him down, you hit the elbow drop, and the crowd just exploded. They're just like, yeah, Devin Drake, he's the man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that whole entire deal. Just talk us through like the emotions and everything you went through for that now show, because that was an amazing night for everybody at now, as well as for you, really.
Yeah, man. let me be honest here. Now wrestling was like the only group of guys, like Nathan, Ruthie, everybody that the originators in that federation, they're the ones that gave me the opportunity to be that main event guy. I felt like I was never that anywhere else. And I remember, not to get off subject a little bit, I remember one night Nathan Gus said to me, you know, I don't know why other promoters and bookers never use you as or put you over as a heavyweight champion. And I gave him a blunt answer. I said, well, it's because I'm short. I mean, why would anybody on, especially on an independent wrestling scene, use a guy that's 5'4", 5'5" as their heavyweight champion? That's just my opinion. Like I said, I worked hard for everything I tried to do, but going back to now wrestling, they gave me that opportunity to run with that heavyweight title. And then that final night, and I think I had a pretty successful run as a heavyweight champion. And if anybody that followed that, everybody that followed that, knows and sees that. And hell, when now wrestling started back up and they put the belt on me, to that time where it was my last night as heavyweight champion, the draw went. I'm not saying it was all me, but when you're the heavyweight champion, that's kind of a big role as in a federation. So the draw went up. People wanted to see me lose because I was such a pretty big heel, in that company. But that night, dude, I'll be honest, I didn't even know that was going to be my last match that night, because it was kind of said beforehand, this is what we're going to do. And since this is your last year, you're going to drop the belt, and this is pretty much your last time, as that's what we're going to do. I was like, oh, so total shock news to me. And like, I remember Jonathan Smash backstage, he kept saying to me, Michael Jarrett, in other words, said to me, are you okay? Because like the entire time backstage, I'm just like, I'm not even thinking about my match. I'm just thinking like, oh, this is it. And Michael just kept coming to me. He's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Just a lot of things going through my head. So, I did the match, and I thought it was a pretty solid match between me and Alpha. And, we get to the 1, 2, 3 spot. And by the way, that was like the first time I wrestled without a shirt on in such a long goddamn time, because I did not have the confidence whatsoever. But I lost so much weight, I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Came off, and I thought it looked decent. But yeah, I did that match, and then it's unfortunate my family and friends weren't there, but um the 1, 2, 3 happened, and like I literally thought I was just gonna drop that elbow on McClure, and then I was gonna go backstage, and that was it. Like, I did everything else that happened after that was not planned whatsoever. So um yeah, that elbow dropped, and um then I started hearing the thank you Devan chants, and I thought to myself right away, I'm like, why the fuck are they chanting for me? I'm a heel, or I was a heel. I'm like, I'm surprised I'm even getting these chants right now. And then you know, the standing ovation started, and I started to get pretty emotional there on the outside of the ring. And it's one of those things where it's like, if like say you won something, like you won a big game or whatever, right? And you worked your entire life for something, like you put a lot of effort into something, you're like out of your like a sports career, I guess you could say. And like here is like your appreciation for it for once. That felt good, because I was always like this badass heel. Like I was always just like cocky, arrogant, pissing people off. And I felt like at that moment, when everybody's standing up cheering, thank you, Devan. And, I had the boys come out from the locker room, and they're hugging me and, clapping for me. I just felt like that was like the only time like I was really like appreciated, and like, thank you for your hard work. And it's just, I lost my shit, and I was bawling. And yeah, it was definitely an emotional night. Definitely will never forget it. Um and yeah, and then we went backstage, and a lot of guys, asked me because some didn't even know, like, it's really your last match. I was like, well, in Now Wrestling, yeah. Because then fast forward a little more, I did the Andrew Everett match, right? And
I
then, but then in December, I was inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was nice of them to do that.
Yeah, December definitely was. I would definitely say one of those months that really stood out because of the fact that Now did have their show there, and I believe weren't you the only like two-time Hall of Famer or something like that, or was that?
Yes, I am a two-time Hall of Fame and Now Wrestling. One with Brock Hall as the Inside Outsiders with our little short run in Now Wrestling, and then me as a singles wrestler. So yeah, I guess I'm the only two-time Hall of Famer in the company, which is pretty cool.
Just walk around, you have like two Now rings, but they're like the little plastic rings you get at like a coin machine.
Right. And it'd be fitting for that because it's Now Wrestling, and they obviously don't take anything serious, and so it's
So
fitting.
So I do love that you brought up the whole match with Everett, because that was one of those matches that I remember you coming up to me and being like, "Do you have like any idea why I'm being put in this matchup here? Why am I getting put in this?" And I kind of explained it to you, and that's where you're like, "Oh, because you're well, oh, okay, that actually kind of makes some more sense now." So it's kind of like one of those matches where it's like, yeah, we're getting a big star that's going to be fighting against you. Why? Well, we're putting the kind of Now taste on it, where it's like you guys are both big guys, you're all fighting each other. So, but honestly, I loved that matchup. That was definitely one of the best matches to close the year with, and I definitely look back at that and think that I will say this: so you made such a positive impact, especially on Everett, that he definitely is planning on coming back. And one of the things that he actually said to me was that he wished that he knew that this was your final matchup, or at least for what it was there that time, because he would have done the honors to where he would have rose your hand, stuff like that. Um, but yeah, no, I definitely will say that was an awesome month and an awesome matchup that you guys provided. And the only thing I hated was that they didn't announce that it was false count anywhere, because then it would have made more sense as to why you guys went from one ring to the other ring.
Yes.
But it's just
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, it's whatever. It's wrestling. Fans don't really care. They'll connect the dots and be like, oh, they're just going to. That's fine.
Yeah, they were entertained by it.
I'm trying to think if there was any other uh match. Oh, okay. I actually do have like two more questions from the Now chat. One of them actually comes from Mr. Ethan Matthews, who asked the question, how do you maintain your mountainous physique?
My mountainous physique.
Yes.
I don't know, man. I just eat Miracle Grow, and that's how I stay 8 feet tall, 500 pounds.
That took me a second.
Yeah, I just fucking make it into a protein shake, just throw some Miracle Grow in there, and that's just what happens.
I'm just imagining now, just somebody like, wow, it's so brown. It's like, yeah, because it's chocolate.
See, exactly.
so, so the other question I had here was, I guess they wanted me to ask about working with Archer Sterling for about a year. Oh, there's a story. There's a story behind this. As soon as I saw the reaction, I'm like, oh boy.
Who brought that up?
I'll give you two guesses.
Let me guess, Ruthie.
Yes.
Yeah, go figure. Man, so okay, rewind a lot to like 2012, 13, I think it was. And this is when I was still a baby face. Um, and Bruno, going back to Bruno, the terrible booker I told you about before,
Oh
just
wow.
thought in his rambling, incoherent mind, he thought, hey, let's have Daredevil Devan and Archer Sterling feud for a year because, that's just what's good for this company. I like Archer Sterling as a person, but as a worker, he's the shits. Like he he kept like whining about stuff. He kept like botching moves in our matches. Um, and what Bruno saw in that, I will never know. But he kept saying, "Oh, it's gonna be you and Archer the next show. It's gonna be you and Archer the next show." Like, dude, this crowd doesn't want to see me and Archer like wrestling like all year round. Like maybe 2 or 3, 4 shows tops, but not all freaking year. And in the process of that, that's when I actually ended up turning heel and feuding with Archer. But no joke, like every show was me, Archer, me, Archer, me and Archer. Like, and that feud ended in a dog collar match, which he screwed up so much shit in that match. Like the dude sucks, and that's a year in my wrestling career I'll never get back. Like, I like Archer as a person, but man, as a worker, he was not that good. I'm not, I'm just being honest. And it is what it is.
It's one of those things where I think I hear that and I'm like, how do you screw up a dog collar match? It can't be that hard, can it?
I mean, normally it's just brawling, but like, I don't know, man. There's so many spots we could have done better, but because, like, and that's the thing too, you want to make a story good. No, he wanted to like do things his like certain ways because he was sick of me going over him all the time. But like this match, he's like, let's do this, let's do that. No, I want to do this on you because I never get shine or blah blah blah. I'm like, well, I agree, and you'll get your shine, but then there's like you have to make a match make sense and make a story make sense, and he wasn't willing to do some of that, and kind of pissed me off, and I was just tired of him like working with him all year long, which was very unnecessary to do. But yeah,
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It's got to make sense. I think that's also one of the reasons why now, prospered so much attendance wise while you were the champion, because the story was indeed there that you're the champion that everybody wants to see, just beat the ever living piss out of. And
yes,
it didn't matter if you were the opening match, middle of the card, main event, as long as they got to see you, get your beat down. And as an added bonus, you lost the title, then hey, they're happy about it. But every single time you came out victorious, and just hearing that, the booze, it just got better and better. But also, as I said before, probably one of the things that stood out was your theme song, Tired. And it's one of those things where I actually remember one show going to my Siri and saying, like, what is this song? Because I needed to jam out to it. And every single time I jam out to that song every now and then. So how did you come across that song, and what made you say, this is what I need as my theme?
yeah, it was playing on the radio one day, and I like the beginning of the right, and I was like, and then it goes into the lyrics, and I was like, this is a pretty badass song. I like this. I'm gonna use it for my wrestling theme. That's pretty much how I came across that. And then I don't even think it plays on the radio anymore. Stone Sour just came out with that big song for like it was like shining for like a year, and then they just stopped using it on the radio and stuff. But I still think it holds up pretty well. So
They're proud that you're carrying on their legacy of that. I don't know if I want to say one hit wonder, because I have to listen to some other songs if they
they
have
have
any.
some other good ones, but that song, yeah, that's definitely my favorite Stone Sour song.
So a couple more questions and then we'll wrap it up. So
Sure.
obviously one of the things that you enveloped into your character was the massive chain around your neck. Was that something that was inspired by, like, I would say, like ECW, like the pit bulls, or was that just something that you thought you'd look like a badass coming out to? Where did the chain kind of come into play?
Yeah, so there was a little gap in this where we kind of missed. I was part of a tag team called Badassery Incorporated in WPW there with Cujo. He's been in the business for a long time, way longer than me. And he's just, if you know anything about Cujo, anybody that's watching, he's just this big badass. Like I want to say like he's pretty much a mad dog, basically, is what he is, and he has this spiked blonde hair, comes out like he's got a body like Vader. I swear to God, wrestles like him too, and he always wore the chain. Well, there was a time in WPW there when there was another smart head booker in the company that brought me back and was like, you two are gonna tag and come up with this name, Badassery Incorporated. So we were scheduled and we faced the Faces of Fear, Haku and Barbarian. So that was a big deal. and we had this I dyed my hair blonde like my partner did, Cujo, and he's like, "You're gonna come to the ring with this big ass chain around your neck." And I was like, okay. And I put the thing on. I'm like, Cujo, I'm gonna get blown up before I get to the ring wearing this. This thing is heavy as shit. And yeah, and I kind of just kept wearing it from that point forward, and it's just kind of one of those I guess Easter eggs, if you will, because me and Cujo, I think we had a solid run as a tag team. um but yeah, and that's why that's the story of the chain.
I just kind of imagine how crazy it would have been if during your final year they were able to get Cujo for a now show just to have that small reunion for you guys.
That was in the works at some point, but then there, like everything else, it's card subject to change, and people back out, or there's some booking conflict and what have you. So
Sure. Yeah, that wrestling things as wrestling does.
exactly, it's independent wrestling. Anything can happen, right?
So, final question, and then I will ask you if you have any final stories or anything that you would like to say, beforehand, even one that you might have not told. Um, when people look back on your career, what is one thing that you want them to take away from Devin Drake, the wrestler?
Um, I want to say, for anybody that's followed me from my first day of wrestling camp to my last match here, um, this past year, is, I really worked my ass off. I like I brought up before, I tried to get along with everybody. I know in this business or any other business, people have different personalities, but I was never part of any clique. I just wanted to show up, work as hard as I could, get along with everybody. And I did burn some bridges and, rub some people the wrong way, but that's wrestling. And but anyways, yeah, I just want them to look back at how hard I worked as a heel. Um I I think a lot of the time when I'd go through the curtain and come out as like this very serious, like just this prick of a bad guy that comes out, that is the 8 feet tall, 500-pound Devin Drake. And I never brought this up before, but I'm going to bring it up now because I just feel like it's the right time to do it. Um, how I got so like into my character, I got so like my mindset going into this character, that when I'd walk through that curtain, like when I was a kid, I got bullied a lot. Like I got bullied hard, man. Like I got my ass kicked randomly, and like when I growing up, like I didn't have the most expensive clothes. I wore glasses. I got my ass kicked for just that at school, is what I'm saying. And going through that curtain every night, being that heel. Sorry, it's just a little emotional just talking about this because this is my mentality. Um, Going through that curtain, when I'm looking at that audience and I'm talking shit to them, I'm thinking those are my bullies growing up. So in a weird fucked up way, it's one of those things where it's like those are all my bullies out there, and I'm going to pretend those are my bullies even though they weren't. But I'm just the mindset going into this character, because that's how serious I took that role, and that's how serious I wanted to be, like at that heavyweight champion level. Like I worked my ass off trying to be that guy, like, and that's why, like, whenever I'd go through, like I said, that curtain, I'd you know, everybody that's talking shit to me, those were my bullies, and I'd always be kind of like fighting back on them and talking shit and saying really mean things, which was my job. But that was kind of like the fire, the fuel of like pissing people off. Like that's why some people, I don't know if you ever noticed when you were backstage, like some of us guys are getting jacked up going out there. Well, before I walk out there, I'm thinking my bullies are out there, man. I'm gonna fucking tell them off, and I'm going to say some pretty nasty things back to them. But I'm also like being that prick of like the cocky heel, there's just some like aspects behind that I went into that, and like just wanted to do a really good job. And I hope people will look back and say, you know, Devan did do, like, he was a badass fucking heel. Like, watch my work. And like, if there's anybody out there that like really wanted that advice, you know, just kind of like look back and what like kind of pisses you off basically, and like use that and go towards that audience and attack them, and you know, be the best heel you can be. And that's kind of what I did, is I kind of looked back at my demons basically, and you know, and those bullies, and I just kind of got all that rage out from that, and used it kind of towards the audience to tick them off. And there's a lot of people that got ticked off at me for some of the things I've said.
It's kind of one of those things where if I were looking at it from like your psyche, is that I look at it more as, you know, you're going out, and even if like one of those bullies was in the crowd, literally it's just one of those things. Hey, you beat me up as a kid. Now you're paying to see that kid that you beat up kick some ass.
Yeah.
So, so in a weird way, I kind of understand where you're coming from, and it is also kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, you're probably working at some random McDonald's, and I'm out here entertaining like thousands of people. Hell, I entertained 5,000 people last week. What have you done since high school?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like some of these people, I don't know what some of them are at, you know, now, some of the bullies and stuff. Actually, it's funny. One of the bullies was at an ACW show. I won't mention his name. I won't mention his name, but I remember walking past him and he was front row. I spit in his face
I was
directly.
wondering.
No, there was no hesitation. Like I literally looked at him, spit in his face. He stood up, and I thought, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?" Like, and like, yeah, my balls felt pretty fucking big at that time. So it's like, if you want to go right now, I'll kick your ass. Then I'll get in the ring and whip my opponent's ass. So,
I just imagine him just slowly sitting back down, being like, "Fuck."
and that's what happened. That's exactly what happened too.
The bullied has become the hunter.
Yes.
So thank you so much for Devan for your time, not only in the ring, but for your taking time out to do this interview. It definitely is one of those interviews that I'm hoping people get a better perspective of not only, you know, wrestling in general, but also the man behind Devan Drake, because honestly, this opened my eyes up immensely. I didn't know what to expect. Like you said, we got a chance to interact, you know, behind the scenes and such like that. But this gives me a deeper appreciation and respect for the person that you are. So thank you so much for everything that you put into, you know, the 15 plus years that you put in, dude. That's says a lot. And I know that we had that conversation, you know, why you wanted to, you know, end it. And one of the things was that, you know, you kept getting overlooked by so many people. Honestly, if you were put into a company like, you know, Impact or Ring of Honor, I could definitely see you trouncing MJF on microphone promo. Because I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, okay, this guy's been doing this for 15 years. He was cool before MJF was doing his shit. So
That's the thing, man. I always worked hard, and just I think if I was ever that, you know, get that opportunity to go to like Impact or a bigger promotion like that, like the stuff I did in now, I definitely amp it up to working even harder, you know.
well, Lord knows that it's not going to be a WWE thing, but
Yeah.
because they're too PC and they care about their PG too much. Toys for Tots are just looking at it like, oh, this guy's working for that promotion. Well, we're pulling this sponsorship away.
Yeah.
So thank you much, Devan, for your time. Thank you guys so much for listening in. For Devan Drake, I've been Nate the NateFNGreat. Always, you can listen on so many different networks. See you guys next time. Bye bye.
Bye.